When my entitled daughter-in-law secretly maxes out my credit card on luxury handbags, thinking I'm too old and clueless to notice, she doesn't realize the bank calls me for every purchase. So I quietly work with the bank and a lawyer to turn her greed into a lesson she'll never forget in front of the whole family. If you had walked past that boutique that afternoon and glanced through the glass, you probably would have thought we were just another happy little family shopping for something special. You would have seen the young woman laughing too loud, trying on one designer handbag after another. You would have seen the older woman standing a little back, hands folded around a worn leather purse, smiling politely. You wouldn't have heard my phone buzzing in my pocket. You wouldn't have heard the bank saying my name. The lights in that store were so bright they almost hurt my eyes. Everything gleamed, mirrored walls, glass shelves, smooth pale tile under my sensible shoes. The air smelled like new leather and expensive perfume. Madison, my daughter-in-law, fit right into all that shine. She was in her element, flipping her hair back and forth, holding handbags up to her shoulder and posing for her phone. "Oh my God, look at this one," she squealed, holding a cream-colored bag with gold hardware. "This is so me." The sales girl laughed, playing along. "You look amazing with that. We just got that style in. Very exclusive." I stood a few feet away, near a rack of silk scarves, trying not to get in the way. I had my purse clutched against my chest, the same simple black bag I'd had for 5 years. My blouse was ironed, my slacks neat, but I still felt like a faded photograph in the middle of a glossy magazine. Maddie caught my eye and waved the bag at me like a trophy. "Evie, this one's perfect for the gala next month, right?" I smiled. "It's very pretty, dear." She grinned and turned back to the salesgirl. "We'll take this one and that one." She pointed to another bag on the shelf. "And actually, let me see that crossbody behind you. No, the other one. Yeah, that." The pile on the counter kept growing. I could see the total flashing on the little screen, numbers rolling higher and higher. The salesgirl's smile never budged, but her eyes kept flicking toward me, like she was trying to figure out which one of us was paying. Maddie answered that question before anyone had to ask. She pulled my platinum card out of her own wallet and spun it between her fingers like a toy. My husband's mom insists on spoiling us. She doesn't even check the bill. A couple of women nearby glanced over. One of them gave me a quick look I recognized all too well. Half envy, half pity. I felt my cheeks warm, but I kept my face gentle, unreadable. That was a trick I learned working in an elementary school office for 30 years. You learn how to keep your voice calm when everything inside you is buzzing. The salesgirl took the card with both hands, still smiling. "Of course, I'll just ring these up for you." That was when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I knew what it was before I even looked. I had been waiting for it, if I'm honest. I slipped my hand into my purse and felt for the familiar little rectangle, my heart beating slow and steady. "Mrs. Harris, this is the bank. We're calling to verify a series of large transactions, luxury handbags, $5,000. I stepped away from the counter, closer to the mirrored wall, so I could see both my own face and Maddie's face at the same time. She was leaning on the glass, laughing at something on her phone, oblivious. The pile of boxes behind the counter looked like a stack of little coffins. "Yes, I'm aware," I said, my voice calm and clipped. "Please proceed." I saw my own eyes in the mirror, dark and clear. Not confused, not frail, not stupid. "And," I added, my gaze locking onto Maddie's in the reflection, "please make sure every charge is documented for me. I want full automation. Every merchant, every time." There was a brief pause on the other end. The bank representative knew my file by now. "Of course, Mrs. Harris. As agreed, we'll continue to record and send all transaction details." "Thank you. That will be perfect." I ended the call and slid the phone back into my purse. A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth before I could stop it. Across the store, Maddie smirked at me like she'd just won something. The salesgirl was packing the bags into shiny boxes, layering them with tissue paper. Maddie took the receipt without even looking at it and stuffed it into their clutch. She hooked her arm through mine as we headed toward the door, boxes in the crook of her elbow. See, she said lightly, we make a great team, Evie. I patted her hand, my expression soft. You have no idea what you just signed yourself up for, sweetheart. I thought, the words quiet and solid in my chest. Out loud, I only said, for a long time, I never imagined I'd be in a situation like that with my own family. I'm Evelyn Harris. Everyone calls me Evie. And I spent most of my life trying to keep things calm and fair. I was the secretary at the same neighborhood elementary school for 30 years. The woman who always knew where the extra pencils were, who had a Band-Aid and a peppermint in her desk for any child who needed it.
When my husband, Thomas, was alive, we were careful with money. Not stingy, just deliberate. Every paycheck, a little went into savings. We packed lunches, we drove our cars until they sighed and gave up the ghost. We didn't buy much we couldn't pay for right away. It wasn't glamorous, but it meant our mortgage got paid off early. And we slept pretty well at night. Even now, after all those years, I can picture him at our kitchen table with his glasses sliding down his nose, his big hands folded around a mug of coffee. We're not rich, he would say, tapping the spreadsheet he'd printed from the computer. But we're okay, Evie. We're building something solid. One day, this house will be ours free and clear. He was right. By the time he passed, the house was paid off. The little 3-bedroom on a quiet street with the creaky porch and the maple tree out front belonged to us outright. After he died, I stayed. I kept his coffee mug in the cabinet, his reading glasses in the drawer by the bed. I planted rosemary and mint in the patch of dirt by the back steps because he always loved the smell. My mornings were simple. I'd wake up, listen to the birds fussing in the tree, feel the ache in my knees remind me that time was moving. I'd make myself tea, always in the same chipped blue mug, then sit by the kitchen window and watch the neighborhood begin its day. Dogs being walked, kids with oversized backpacks, cars reversing out of driveways like little metal beetles. It wasn't exciting, but it was mine. The house was quiet, yes, but it was the kind of quiet I had earned. I wanted to protect that, for me and for my granddaughter. Jason, my only son, came along late in life. I was 35 when I had him after years of thinking I never would. From the moment they laid that squirming little boy on my chest, I felt like my heart lived outside my body. When he grew up and left for college, I cried in the parking lot until Thomas had to drive us home. So when he brought home a serious girlfriend, I tried hard, maybe too hard, to like her. I still remember the first time I met Maddie. She breezed into my house like the spring wind, carrying the smell of expensive perfume and hair products, her nails perfect, her lipstick flawless. She worked in branding, she said, which I didn't fully understand, but it seemed to involve a lot of photos and brunches. She wore high heels to my backyard cookout and kept checking her phone between bites of potato salad. It's so cute here, she said, looking around my little living room with its family photos and old couch. Very vintage. I smiled even though the words stung a little. Well, we've been here a long time. It shows, she said, not unkindly, just blunt. Jason, remember we talked about updating the kitchen? We could get a sponsor for that, transforming my boyfriend's mom's outdated kitchen. People would watch that. She laughed. Jason laughed too, a little nervously. I laughed because everyone else did. From the beginning, Maddie and I were from different worlds. She thought in followers and content and aesthetic. I thought about budgets and recipes and how to stretch a casserole. But I tried. I bought a nicer set of dishes for when they came over. I learned how to use emojis in text messages so I wouldn't seem completely out of touch. When Lily was born, Maddie's and my lives tangled even more. They needed help. Of course they did. 2 working parents, a tiny baby, a mortgage, and the endless expenses that come with diapers and formula and tiny socks that disappear into the dryer. Can you watch Lily for just a couple of hours? Jason would ask. Maddie has a last-minute meeting. Of course, I would say, no matter what I had planned. That baby would arrive half asleep in her car seat, and Maddie would kiss the air near my cheek and rush back out the door in heels that clicked across my worn tile. Sorry, Evie, traffic was crazy, she'd say when she finally picked Lily up. Sometimes 4, 5 hours later. You know how it is. She never offered gas money, never asked if I needed anything. At first, I brushed it off. It's family, I told myself. You don't charge your own son to babysit your grandchild. But then there were little things, small comments, testing the boundaries. We'd go out to eat once in a while, the 3 of us and the baby, at those places where everything is served on wooden boards and they call French fries frites. When the check came, Maddie would suddenly pat her purse and say, "Oh my God, I left my wallet in the diaper bag. Evie, could you..." Or she'd hand the bill straight to me, smiling. "You know old people are better with money, right? You guys actually save. We'll get it next time." There was never a next time. Or if there was, something always came up. I still remember one evening at a little Italian place. The waitress set the bill down, and before I could even reach for it, Maddie slid it my way with a manicured finger. "Thank you, Evie," she said, like it was settled. "You're the best. God, I hope I'm as generous as you when I'm your age."
Jason looked at his phone, pretending not to see. My chest tightened, but I smiled and took out my card. "It's fine," I said. "I've got it." On the car ride home that night, my own thoughts turned against me. "You're being petty, Evie. They're young. Things are expensive. You have enough. Don't be that mother-in-law who keeps score." And yet, when I lay in bed later, staring at the dark ceiling, I couldn't shake the sting of that phrase Maddie had used. Old people are better with money. It was true in a way. Thomas and I had been careful. That was why there was any extra at all. That was why the house was paid off. We hadn't saved all those years so someone could treat our life's work like a bottomless buffet. The first strange charge on my card happened on a Tuesday. I remember because I was in the grocery store, standing in front of the canned tomatoes, debating between store brand and name brand, when my phone buzzed. "Thank you for your purchase at Glow Spa, $237.49. I frowned. I'd never heard of Glow Spa in my life. I stood there in the aisle, surrounded by stacks of soup cans and fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and read the message 3 times. My heart rate ticked up. Had my card been stolen? By the time I got home and called the bank, another charge had appeared, this time for a makeup subscription box. The representative was polite, patient. She went through the last few charges with me, and I realized, with a slow sinking feeling, that there were more I hadn't noticed. Small at first, then bolder. "Do you recognize these merchants, Mrs. Harris?" she asked. I recognized the names from things Maddie had mentioned. Beauty boxes, a boutique she loved, that same restaurant where I paid the bill and told myself not to be petty. "Yes," I said slowly. "I know who they're for. I just didn't know they were going on my card." "I see," the woman said carefully. "We do have options to help you monitor and manage your account. We can set spending alerts or even call you directly for transactions over a certain amount." Something in my chest steadied. Thomas's voice from years ago, cold and clear. "Don't let anyone bully you." "Could you explain how the calls would work?" I asked. She walked me through it. We could set a threshold. For anything over $100 or any transaction that looked unusual, they would call me. They could also send itemized reports monthly or even weekly if I wanted. I held the phone between my shoulder and ear and looked around my quiet kitchen. The sink was empty. The counters were wiped down. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and the stew I'd made for myself the night before. Everything in that room, from the mismatched mugs to the crocheted pot holder, had been paid for with care. Yes, I said, I would like that. I didn't know it then, but that one choice, to ask for those calls, would be the line between being quietly used and quietly ready. The day Maddie asked me to go window shopping, I almost said no. I'd planned to putter in the garden, maybe bake something for Lily's school bake sale. But Jason called, his voice tired. Mom, she's been stressed. Work has been rough. It would mean a lot if you spent some time with her. Please? So I said yes. That's something I've done all my life. Said yes, even when my stomach whispered no. When Maddie picked me up, she was all sweetness and light. You deserve to get out of the house, she said as she drove, turning the music down just enough so we could talk. Let's have a girls' day, okay? She talked about sales and brands while I watched the city slide by outside the window. When we walked into that high-end mall, I could smell coffee and perfume and something else. Money. People walk differently in places like that, like they had somewhere important to be and didn't need to look where their feet landed. Inside the boutique, the air was cooler. Maddie's whole body language changed. Her shoulders squared, her chin lifted. She was on a stage, and everyone else was the audience. She moved from display to display, pointing, laughing. This will look so good on my feed, she said, propping a bag on her arm and snapping a selfie. Jason is going to die. Standing there among the polished shelves and soft music, I suddenly understood something. This wasn't about needing help. This was about wanting to look like the kind of person who didn't have to think about price tags. And in her mind, that sort of person had me standing quietly behind her, purse at ready. When the total rang up and the sales girl's eyebrows flicked up just a tiny bit, I felt my cheeks burn. Not because I couldn't afford it, not exactly. It was because of the way Maddie looked at me when I hesitated, like I was being unreasonable, like I was embarrassing her. Don't tell me this is too much for you, she said, her voice sugar-sweet but sharp underneath. You tell everyone you're comfortable, right? The women beside us shifted. Somebody coughed. The sales girl smiled a small, tight smile. I wanted to say, comfortable doesn't mean careless. I wanted to ask why wanting to keep a promise to my late husband made me stingy in her eyes. Instead, I handed over the card. Run it. My voice was flat, but inside, something had been lit. Not rage exactly, more like the blue pilot light on a gas stove, quiet and steady and waiting for someone to turn the knob.
When the bank called right there in the store and I had to confirm the purchase, the humiliation thickened. I felt as if I was standing under a spotlight, saying, yes, I approve someone taking advantage of me. I changed my tone just a hair, and the woman on the other end picked up on it. She slowed down. She repeated my options. I listened. I tucked every word into the part of my brain that keeps track of lunch money and permission slips. On the way home, Maddie chatted the whole time about outfits and events. This one will be for the gala, this one for brunch, this one for my content. I swear, Evie, you're the only reason we look this put together. We'd starve without your card. She laughed like it was a compliment. I kept my eyes on the road. If she's this comfortable doing this in front of me, I thought, what is she doing when I'm not there? It didn't take long to find out. A few days later, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, glasses perched on my nose, looking at my online statement. The screen glowed in the dim light from the overhead fixture. Charge after charge marched down the page. Makeup subscription, restaurant, boutique spa, Late-night food delivery on nights I knew they'd told me they couldn't afford groceries? I scrolled, my heart thumping a little faster with each line. The amounts weren't small, and they weren't mine. I printed the statement. The printer hummed and spat out page after page until I had a neat stack of paper in my hands and a weight in my chest. That evening, when Jason came by to drop off Lily, I took a breath and showed him the stack. "Have you seen these charges, Jason?" I asked, gently. He glanced at the top page, then away, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mom, Maddie's been using the card sometimes, yeah. She told you, didn't she? She asked me, in front of people, to pay for dinner. She said you'd transfer it back. These I didn't know about." He sighed, already tired. "She's under a lot of stress. You know how her job is. Clients, image, all that. Just let her live a little. You're comfortable, right?" There it was again. You're comfortable. As if that was permission. What happens when I'm not comfortable anymore? He didn't have an answer. He reached for his keys instead. "Mom, I don't have the energy for this right now. Can we talk about it later?" He left Lily with me, kissed the top of her head, and walked out the door before I could say anything else. That night, after Lily fell asleep in the spare room and the house went quiet, I sat at the table with that stack of papers again. I traced some of the amounts with my finger. I thought about the years of eating leftovers, of mending clothes, of saying no to vacations so the mortgage would be paid down faster. I thought about Thomas tapping his spreadsheets. I also thought about the way Maddie had joked at dinner with her friends the week before. "Evie's basically our sponsor," she had said, while her girlfriends giggled and sipped their cocktails. "We'd starve without her card." They had laughed. I had laughed, too, small and tight. Lily, coloring at the end of the table, had paused and looked up at me, her little brow furrowed. Even at 8, she could feel when something wasn't kind. Later, as I washed dishes in their sink, I heard Maddie in the other room, her voice low but not low enough. "She acts like she's broke, but the house is paid off. She's just hoarding it. What's she going to do with all that money? Take it to the grave?" My hands shook a little on the wet plates. I turned off the faucet and stood there, listening to my own heartbeat. Maybe, once upon a time, I would have just swallowed it, told myself I was being dramatic. But the next morning, when the bank called again about another big purchase, this time for a luxury online boutique, I didn't just say yes. "I do recognize the merchant," I told the woman on the phone, my voice calm. "Please approve it. And please send me a full itemized statement of all recent charges. Email and mail. And could I schedule an appointment with a manager to talk about account controls?" "Of course, Mrs. Harris. We'd be happy to help." I hung up and looked around my little kitchen again. The fridge hummed softly. The clock ticked on the wall. My herb garden waited just outside the window. Everything felt like it was holding its breath. A few days later, I walked into the bank, holding my purse tight and that folder of printed statements even tighter. The air inside was cool and smelled like paper and coffee. People moved quietly, heads bent over forms. Screens glowed behind tidy desks. "Mrs. Harris," a woman called kindly. She was petite, with dark hair pulled back and reading glasses perched on her nose. The nameplate on her desk read, "Anita Patel, branch manager." She shook my hand and invited me to sit. "You wanted to talk about some concerns on your account?" I sat, smoothing my skirt over my knees. "Yes." I said, "It's my card, but my daughter-in-law has been using it more than I realized." We went through the statements together, line by line, merchant by merchant. Mrs. Patel didn't judge, but her lips did press together once or twice in a way I recognized from years of looking at misbehaving children. She understood.
"We can absolutely help you set firmer controls," she said when we'd finished. "You're the only primary on this card. That means you have ultimate authority. We can call you for everything over a certain amount or for specific types of transactions. We can record those calls. We can separate your main savings from this account so it's never at risk. Whatever makes you feel safe. Safe, I repeated quietly. It wasn't a word I'd associated with my own son's household before, but that was what I wanted, to feel safe in my own future. She explained options, alerts, limits. We talked about setting up a small, separate checking account that the card would pull from instead of my main savings. If something went wrong, the damage would be limited. Then she said something that made the air around me sharpen. I also see here, she said, pointing at her screen, that an authorized user was added to your card a while back, Madison Harris. That allows her to make purchases, but it does not change the fact that this account is in your name only. You can remove her at any time. You are not legally obligated to allow her to continue using this card. I blinked. Jason added her, I said slowly. He never told me he did it formally. I thought she just had my number saved somewhere. Mrs. Patel's expression softened. Even if he added her, he cannot override your rights as the account holder. This is your account, Mrs. Harris. You decide who has access. I sat back, letting that sink in. For months, I had been acting like I was at the mercy of my son's marriage, like my choices had already been made. But here, in this quiet office, looking at my name on the screen, I realized something important. I still had power. Can we not remove her just yet? I asked slowly. I know that sounds strange, but I'd like to keep the card active with some protections. I want to see exactly what she does when she thinks no one is watching. Mrs. Patel studied me for a moment, then nodded. We can certainly set up stronger controls, and we can send you itemized reports. We can also note your files so that if we suspect unusual activity, we contact you right away. We already know there's unusual activity, I said quietly. I'd like to make sure it's documented. Every bit of it. When I left that bank, my steps felt heavier and lighter all at once. Outside, the sun hit my eyes and I blinked. Cars rolled by on the street. People went in and out of shops, carrying bags, talking into phones, living their lives. In my purse, my phone buzzed with a new alert. Transaction recorded. I smiled to myself. You want to play adult games with money, Maddie? I thought, my fingers tightening around the strap of my bag. Then we'll play by adult rules. I decided something else too. I wasn't going to confront her right away. I was going to watch. I was going to listen. And I was going to protect what Thomas and I had built, even if that meant protecting it from my own family. That night, alone in my bedroom, I sat on his side of the bed. His reading lamp was still there, though it hadn't been turned on in years. I looked at the indentation on the mattress, softer on his side even after all this time. I'm sorry I let it get this far, I whispered into the quiet room. I thought helping them was what we were supposed to do. In my mind, I could see him raising one eyebrow the way he used to when something didn't sit right with him. There's helping, his memory said, and letting somebody walk right over you, Evie. You know the difference.
I do now, I murmured. I touched the worn nightstand, then got up, feeling a new steadiness in my spine. In the morning, I opened a brand new savings account at a different bank, just for Lily's future. A little at first, more as I moved money around in closed old accounts. It felt like putting bricks into a wall between her and whatever mess her parents might make. At the same time, I kept being Grandma Evie. I babysat, I baked cookies, I took Lily to the park, I answered the bank's calls in the pantry or on the back step, keeping my voice level. Sometimes Lily would catch me frowning at my phone. "Are you okay, Grandma?" she'd asked, her little hand resting on my arm. "I'm okay, baby," I'd say, forcing a smile. Some grown-ups forget how to be kind when they're scared or greedy. I'm just making sure I don't forget. She'd tilt her head, not fully understanding, then hug me around the waist. "You're the nicest person I know," she told me once. So sure and simple, it brought tears to my eyes. Her words were like a hand on my back,
gently pushing me forward whenever guilt told me to sit down and be quiet. Maddie, oblivious to all of this, kept spending and bragging. "This card is basically our family fund," she joked one afternoon as we stood in line at yet another boutique. "Right, Evie?" I smiled faintly. "Is that what we're calling it now?" She laughed, not catching the steel beneath my tone. "You know you love spoiling us. You're gonna die with that money anyway. Might as well enjoy it now." She didn't notice the way the woman in line ahead of us stiffened. She didn't notice the way my hand tightened around my purse strap until my knuckles went white.
More than once, I almost snapped. I almost pulled the statements out of my bag and slapped them on whatever counter we were standing at. But each time, I saw Lily's face in my mind. I saw the image of her at 18, needing help with college or with escaping a bad situation. I saw my house as a safe place for her, a place that didn't belong to anyone else's bad decisions. That vision cooled my temper and hardened my resolve. The bank calls continued. Each approval was a little stone in a growing pile of evidence. Each recorded conversation, each text alert, another thread in the net I was weaving around Maddie's selfishness. There were a few close calls. One afternoon, we were sitting at their kitchen table and my phone buzzed with a notification. It flashed across the screen. Evidence file updated. I snatched it up a second too late. "What was that?" Maddie asked, reaching as if to take the phone from my hand. "Just my crossword app," I lied smoothly, forcing a chuckle. "It tells me when I'm losing my streak. Bossy thing." She rolled her eyes. "You and your little word games," she said, already turning back to her own screen. "You should get on TikTok. That would keep your brain young." Another time, Jason walked into Mr. Green's office while I was sitting there with a folder full of trust documents. My heart dropped into my stomach. Mr. Green, bless him, didn't even blink. "We're just making sure your mother's estate planning is up to date, so you don't have to deal with the pile of paperwork later on." I nodded along, my hands folded in my lap. "Your father and I should have done this years ago." Nothing dramatic. Jason, uncomfortable with any talk of death, backed out almost immediately. "Nah, sure, whatever you need, Mom," he said, already halfway out the door. Then there was the evening when a bank call came while Maddie and I were folding laundry together. I stepped into the hallway to answer, but she followed me with a stack of towels in her arms. "Yes, that's correct," I said into the phone, listening as the representative listed off another round of luxury purchases. "Please approve, and make sure it's recorded." "Why are you making such a big deal about it?" Maddie asked, as soon as I hung up. Her tone was half teasing, half annoyed. "You act like they're robbing you." "At my age, dear," I said sweetly, patting her arm, "you double-check everything. Keeps your mind sharp." She rolled her eyes. "I swear, old people and their paranoia," she muttered, heading back to the living room. I watched her go, my smile fading as soon as she couldn't see it. Old people and their paranoia, I thought. Or old people and their survival skills. The plan for the big moment came from Maddie herself. She started talking months in advance about her upcoming 34th birthday. "I want to do it right this year," she told her friends one evening while I watched Lily on the floor with her dolls. "Not just some boring house thing. I'm talking a real dinner. Upscale, a place where they fold the napkins fancy. And you know Evie will pick up the tab," one of her friends joked, glancing over at me. "She's a queen for that." Maddie laughed. "Of course, she insists, right, Evie?" I looked up and met her eyes. "If I'm there," I said mildly, "I'll be sure to bring my card." That was all the encouragement she needed. She booked the fancy restaurant. She invited not just family, but friends and even some of Jason's coworkers. She hinted loudly on social media that her incredible mother-in-law had something special planned for her big night. Behind the scenes, I had my own planning to do. I met with Mrs. Patel again. We chose a very particular setup. On the night of the dinner, any large in-person charge at that restaurant would trigger not just a call, but a visible decline on the first pass. I would have to take the call. I would have to decide out loud what to do. I also sat down with Mr. Green and finalized the trust, the updated will, the letters that would be sent to Jason and Maddie if they crossed certain lines again. We drafted one more thing, too. A formal warning that any attempt to pressure me into financial decisions could be reported as elder financial abuse. I prayed I would never have to send it, but it was there, waiting. The day before the dinner, I sat at my kitchen table with the thick envelope of printed statements spread out by date. I highlighted key charges. One here from the night she told me they couldn't afford Lily's school shoes. Another there from 2 days after Jason said their rent was late. I tucked the pages back into the envelope, smoothed the flap, and slipped it into my purse. In the quiet that followed, I heard my own heartbeat, loud and clear. I also heard a younger version of myself, the one who had said yes to everything because saying no felt like a betrayal. "Are you really going to do this?" she asked. "Yes," I said out loud to no one. "I'm done being your invisible wallet." The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. Not fancy exactly, but neat. A navy blouse, black slacks, the good shoes I wore to church. I put on the earrings Thomas had given me for our 25th anniversary. I curled the ends of my hair and added a little lipstick. When I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, I saw every year of my life in the fine lines around my eyes.
"You've been through worse than this," I told my reflection softly. "You can get through a dinner." The restaurant was one of those places where everything is deliberately dim. Candles on the tables, soft golden light, quiet music playing, a piano, maybe, or a guitar. The kind of place where voices drop automatically and laughter carries. They had a long table set up for us. Maddie sat near the head, flanked by her friends. Jason sat beside her, looking tired around the eyes. I was placed near the far end, close enough to see everything, far enough to be easy to ignore. Maddie walked in wearing a dress I knew my card had paid for and carrying one of the handbags from that first boutique trip. She twirled once, making the fabric flare. "Everyone, thank you for coming," she trilled. "Evie, doesn't this dress look amazing?" "It's very pretty," I said, sipping my water. She beamed, soaking up the attention. All evening she played hostess, waving to the waiter, ordering appetizers for the table, suggesting the most expensive wine. She encouraged everyone to get whatever they want. "Evie's coming through for us like always," she said at one point, clinking her glass against mine. "We're so blessed." Some people laughed. Some shifted in their seats, glancing at me. I just smiled. My heart beat steady as a drum. As the night went on, I felt the envelope in my purse like a second heartbeat. The conversations flowed around me, work gossip, gossip about people I didn't know, a little chatter about my vintage house. When the plates were finally cleared and everyone sat back, content and a little flushed from the wine, the bill arrived. The server set the black folder down near Maddie with a discreet nod. "Oh, here it comes," she said, her eyes sparkling. She picked it up dramatically, glanced at the total, and let out a low whistle. "Wow, good thing we've got Evie." She slid the folder down the table toward me with a flourish. "Don't worry, Evie, she's got it. She always does." Jason winced. I saw it, a tiny flinch around his eyes, but he said nothing. I opened the folder. The total stared up at me, a number that could have covered 3 months of my mortgage back when we were paying it. I studied it for a long second, then took my card out of my wallet and placed it on top of the bill. My fingers were steady. "Here you go," I said, handing it to the server. He nodded and disappeared. A soft buzz of conversation filled the space he left. Maddie leaned over to her friend and whispered something, and they both laughed. I traced the edge of my napkin with one finger. My pulse ticked in my throat. When the server came back, his expression had changed. Polite still, but tight around the edges. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," he said gently. "Your bank is on the phone regarding the card. They'd like to speak with you." He held out a cordless phone, and the little green light blinked. All down the table, heads turned. The noise quieted. In the flickering candlelight, faces blurred together, eyes reflecting small flames. I felt every eye on me as I reached for the phone. "This is Evelyn Harris," I said. "Mrs. Harris," the familiar voice said. It was the same woman who called me about handbags months before. "We're calling about multiple high-value transactions on your account over the past few months, including luxury purchases and tonight's dinner. Do you authorize these as charges made by your authorized user, Madison Harris?" For a moment, no one breathed. I could feel Maddie's fear hit the table like a cold wind. Beside her, Jason's face went pale. Slowly, I reached into my purse with my free hand and pulled out my reading glasses. My hands were still steady as I put them on and stood up. "No," I said clearly, my voice carrying down the length of the table. The word hung in the air like a bell. "In fact," I went on, my gaze moving from the candle in front of me to Maddie's stunned face, "I would like to revoke that authorization effective immediately." Someone gasped. A fork clinked against a plate. The server shifted his weight from one foot to the other, eyes wide. "Of course, Mrs. Harris," the woman on the phone said. "We'll process that now. We will also decline the current transaction unless you instruct us otherwise." "Thank you," I said. "Hold for just a moment, please." I lowered the phone just enough to see the table clearly. Maddie's mouth was hanging open. Her eyes were glassy, confused, then angry. "Evie, what are you doing?" she demanded, voice high and brittle. "We're family." "Family doesn't steal," I said quietly. She laughed, but it was a dry, ugly sound. "Steal? Are you serious right now? You're going to do this here in front of everyone? Over some bags and a dinner?" "Not over some bags. Over months of using my money, my name, my credit without my informed consent. Over making jokes about me being your sponsor. Over acting like my age made me too stupid to notice." I reached into my purse again and pulled out the thick envelope. My fingertips brushed the rough edge of the paper, and I thought of all the nights I'd sat at my table highlighting those numbers. I slid the envelope down the table until it rested in front of her. "What is this?" she snapped. "Why don't you open it?" I suggested.
Her fingers were less sure than mine as she tore the flap. She pulled out the stack of statements, eyes scanning the top page, then the next. Her face drained of color as she saw the highlighted lines. "That's Glow Spa," I said gently. $237 on a day you told me you and Jason couldn't afford groceries. "That's the boutique from last month," I went on, tapping another line. "The day you joked that I was your sponsor and you'd starve without my card. That one there," I continued, my voice still calm, "is the night Jason called me asking if I could help with Lily's school shoes because you said things were tight. 2 days after that, you spent more on dinner and drinks than those shoes cost." I flipped through pages as I spoke, the paper whispering in the candlelight. With each example, the room grew quieter. Some of Jason's coworkers looked down at their laps, embarrassed for him. One of Maddie's friends pushed her wine glass away. "As you can all see," I said, addressing the table now, "these are not 1 or 2 mistakes. This is a pattern. And all of it, every single one of these charges is on a card that is in my name alone." "I thought we were a family,"
Maddie's voice broke. "We talked about this. You said you wanted to help. You said you had enough. You can't just turn on me like this." "I didn't turn on you," I corrected, my voice as gentle as I could make it. "I turned on the faucet. And this," I tapped the stack of papers, "is everything that spilled out." I looked at Jason then. Really looked at him. My son. The little boy who used to crawl into our bed during thunderstorms and tuck himself between me and his father. "You dismissed me when I said I was uncomfortable," I told him, my voice shaking now for the first time. "You let your wife treat me like an ATM, not my mother. You let her ridicule me in front of her friends. You told me to let her live a little when she was living off money your father and I saved our whole lives." His lips parted. His eyes shone. "Mom, I didn't realize." "That's the problem," I said softly. "You didn't want to realize. It was easier not to look." I raised the phone back to my ear. "Thank you for waiting," I told the bank representative. "Please decline this transaction, and please proceed with removing Madison Harris as an authorized user on my account, effective immediately." "It's done, Mrs. Harris. Is there anything else we can do for you tonight?" I glanced around the table one more time, at my son's bowed head, at my daughter-in-law's tear-streaked face, at their friends who suddenly seemed to have discovered something fascinating in the patterns on the tablecloth. "No," I said. "You've done enough. Thank you." I handed the phone back to the server. "I'll need a separate bill for my meal," I told him, kindly. "Just mine. They will handle the rest." Maddie's chair scraped backward as she stood up, hands shaking. "We can't afford this," she hissed. "Are you trying to ruin us on my birthday?" "No," I said, standing too. My knees protested, but I didn't let it show. "I'm trying to stop you from ruining me. There's a difference. You can't just cut us off like this. I've been counting on you to ignore what I see. That ends tonight." I took a breath, feeling every pair of eyes on me. "For everyone's information," I said, addressing the table now, "I have already transferred my main assets. My house is in a trust. My savings are protected. I have spoken with a lawyer. There will be no more family fund at the expense of my future." I picked up my small handbag and slipped it over my shoulder. For a moment, I rested a hand on the back of my empty chair. "If any of you ever find yourselves in my shoes one day," I added quietly, looking at the older faces at the table, "I hope you remember this. You are allowed to say no, even to your own children." With that, I nodded to the server, murmured a thank you, and walked away from the table, past the flickering candles and hushed whispers, out into the cool night air. As the restaurant door closed behind me, I heard voices rise inside, confused, angry, embarrassed. But out on the sidewalk, the night was sharp and clean. I could smell rain on the wind. My heart was pounding, but my shoulders felt lighter than they had in months. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a walking wallet. I felt like a woman who had finally, firmly closed her purse. I didn't sleep much that night. When I closed my eyes, I kept seeing the restaurant table, the candles, the white plates smeared with sauce, Maddie's stunned face, Jason's bowed head. The phrases I'd said replayed in my mind, and with them, a familiar old guilt tried to creep back in. You embarrassed your own child. You did it in public. You could have handled it quietly. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house creak and sigh around me. The maple tree outside brushed its branches lightly against the window. The digital clock on my nightstand glowed red numbers into the dark. I glanced toward Thomas's side of the bed and imagined what he'd say if he'd been there to see that dinner. Well, his voice said in my mind, wry and gentle, you always did know how to pick your moment, Evie.
In the morning, the house felt different. Not quieter exactly, but clearer. The air was cool, and the lemon cleaner smell from the kitchen mixed with the coffee I made, a simple little comfort. I was just sitting down at the table with my mug when there was a knock at the door. It was too early for deliveries. My heart gave a small jump. I set the coffee down, wiped my hands on my robe, and went to the door. When I opened it, Jason stood there on the porch. His shoulders seemed to have collapsed in on themselves overnight. The dark circles under his eyes were darker. He looked older than he had any right to at 35. "Hi, Mom," he said, voice hoarse. "Come in," I said quietly, stepping back. He walked past me into the living room, like he had as a teenager, after getting in trouble. Hesitant, unsure where to put his hands. I closed the door and followed him into the living room, motioning toward the couch. "Sit," I said. "Do you want coffee?" He shook his head and sat down heavily, elbows on his knees, fingers laced together. For a moment, we just breathed the same air. The only sounds, the tick of the wall clock, and the faint hum of the refrigerator down the hall. "I'm sorry," he blurted finally. "I don't even know where to start, but I'm sorry." I sat in my armchair across from him, folding my hands in my lap. My voice wasn't sharp, but it wasn't soft either. I needed to hear him say it. Not for me, but for him. He swallowed hard. He said for all of it. For ignoring you. For letting Maddie treat you like that. For putting you in that position last night. He broke off, his face twisting. "I didn't realize how bad it was, Mom. I swear I didn't." I nodded once. "You didn't want to realize," I said. "You told yourself it was fine because I didn't make a scene, because I kept paying. That made it easier to not ask questions." He winced, but he didn't argue. "That's true," he said quietly. "I didn't want to rock the boat. Things at work have been stressful, and at home, sometimes it felt like if I said no to Maddie about one thing, everything would blow up. And you decided I was the safer person to disappoint." He closed his eyes. A single tear slipped out and dropped onto his clasped hands. "I'm so ashamed, Mom," he whispered. "I never wanted to be the kind of son who takes advantage of his own mother." I watched him, this man who used to fit in the crook of my arm. My heart ached for him, even as it smarted from what he allowed. Love is a complicated thing like that. It can hold hurt and tenderness in the same palm. "I know you didn't set out to be that," I said, "but that's who you let yourself become. And if I had kept letting it go, it would have gotten worse. Not just for me, but for you too." He scrubbed his hands over his face. "What happens now?" he asked. Are you really cutting us off completely?" "I'm protecting myself. My house, my savings, my future. Those things are no longer up for discussion. There will be no more shared cards, no more family fund jokes, no more decisions made about my money without my full, informed consent." He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "I understand. I will still be Lily's grandmother. That doesn't change. She didn't do anything wrong. But I won't watch her or come over on call like a live-in nanny while your wife treats me like a joke. I need boundaries, Jason. Real ones. He blinked, his eyes red. Does that mean you don't want us over anymore? I took a breath, feeling the weight of the words forming. I'm willing to see you here. And Lily, of course. As for Maddie, I let the sentence hang for a moment. She is not welcome in my home until she can apologize sincerely and show over time that she understands what she did was wrong. Not just embarrassing, not just inconvenient, wrong. He flinched, but he didn't argue. She's not there yet, he admitted. Right now, she's just angry. At you, at me, at the bank. He gave a small, bitter laugh. She's furious the card didn't go through. Says you blindsided her. I thought about the stack of statements, the jokes, the nights she'd toss the bill at me like it was my birthright to pay it. She didn't mind blindsiding me for months, with spa days and handbags and dinners. He hesitated, staring at me. I know, he said quickly. I told her that. It, didn't go well. Silence stretched between us. I could feel his shame sitting in the room like a heavy coat draped over a chair. Jason, I said gently, I love you. That has never changed. I will always love you. But love and access are two different things. You and Maddie no longer have access to my money. That's done. He nodded, tears slipping quietly down his face now. Can I do anything to fix this? I mean, apart from respecting your boundaries, I want to make it right somehow. I thought about that. You can start, I said slowly, by standing up to your wife when she disrespects me. Not screaming or fighting, just a simple, that's my mother. Don't talk about her that way. You can take responsibility for your own spending instead of letting her run everything. You can show Lily what respect looks like.
He sniffed, wiping his nose with the back of his hand like he was 10 again. Okay, he whispered. I can try that. I will try that. I leaned forward and put my hand over his. His skin was warm and slightly damp. I could feel the tremor in his fingers. I know it's hard, I said, but hard is not the same as impossible. You're not a boy anymore. It's time to act like the man I raised, not just the husband Maddie expects you to be. A weak smile ghosted across his face. There she is, he said quietly, school secretary voice. I halved a small laugh despite myself. You're not the first stubborn child I've had to get through to, I said, just the one I love the most. He squeezed my hand. Thank you for not giving up on me, he said, even after all this. I'm not giving up, I said. I'm just putting down some lines you can't cross. If you love me, you'll respect them. If you love your daughter, you'll show her how to respect them too. He stayed for another hour, just talking. Not about money, about work, about Lily's latest obsession with outer space, about how tired he was of always feeling like he was behind. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had my son back, not just the man who came to pick up his child and drop off his problems. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mail with Mr. Green's neat professional logo at the top. I read it at my kitchen table with a cup of tea. The language was formal, almost cold, but underneath it was a warmth I recognized, the warmth of someone who was firmly on my side. He had sent a copy to Jason and Maddie, too. It spelled out in clear terms that any attempt to coerce or pressure me into signing over assets or making financial decisions under duress could be considered elder financial abuse and reported. It also confirmed the trust that now held my house and primary savings, putting them beyond reach without very specific conditions. I slid the letter back into its envelope and put it in the same drawer where I kept Thomas's old reading glasses. A reminder, a safeguard.
Word of what happened at the restaurant spread faster than I expected. That's the thing about public scenes. People talk. Jason mentioned that some of his coworkers pulled him aside at work, some to offer quiet support, others to gossip. "I didn't know your mom was such a boss," one of them had joked, according to Jason. "I wish my mama would have done that when my sister was draining her." Not all the feedback was kind, of course. Some people said I went too far, that I should have handled it privately. But none of the people saying that had watched their savings be nibbled away by 1,000 entitled bites. As for Maddie's friends, a few unfollowed her online, according to the little bits I heard. Even the ones who stayed noticeably commented less on her posts. There were fewer photos of champagne and handbags, more vague quotes about betrayal and fake people, a lot of dramatic song lyrics, very few tags in fancy restaurants. The biggest change, though, was closer to home. One Saturday, not long after the dinner, I was pruning the rosemary bush when a car pulled up in front of the house. I straightened slowly, my knees complaining, and shaded my eyes. It was Jason, alone. In the passenger seat, I could see bags of groceries. In the back, a box of light bulbs and a new rake. He got out and gave me a sheepish smile. He said he noticed my porch light was flickering last time he was there, and he remembered I mentioned the rake handle was cracking. He thought I'd bring a few things, just in case. I leaned on my garden shears and looked at him for a long moment. I said, "Thank you. That's very thoughtful." He spent the next few hours puttering around the house, changing bulbs, tightening cabinet hinges, cleaning out the gutters while I held the ladder. We worked mostly in comfortable silence, with small pockets of conversation about mundane things. It felt normal. Good, even. Later, as he washed his hands at my kitchen sink, he said lightly, "I can come by next weekend, too, if you need. Lily likes it here. Maybe I'll bring her to help bake cookies. No hidden bills, I promise." I smiled. Cookies I can afford, those are a good investment. As for Maddie, she stayed away. For weeks, I didn't see her at all. I heard about her, though. Jason would mention in passing that she was figuring things out, and that money was tight without my card to lean on. One afternoon, when he dropped off Lily, he lingered in the doorway and said, "She started selling some of her bags online to help cover things. She's not thrilled about it, but she's doing it." I pictured those expensive bags in their glossy boxes, snapped up by strangers for a fraction of their price. There was a cold kind of symmetry in it. Actions have consequences, I said quietly. She's lucky the consequences are financial and not legal. He nodded. He knows that, he said, even if she won't say it out loud yet. The months rolled by. Seasons shifted. The maple tree out front traded green leaves for gold, then let them go. The air turned crisp. I started keeping a blanket on the back of the couch for my knees. Lily came over most weekends. We baked banana bread. We made little science experiments with vinegar and baking soda in the kitchen sink. We had picnics on the living room floor when it rained, spreading out a blanket and pretending the coffee table was a mountain.
One afternoon, she arrived clutching a poster board almost as big as she was. "Grandma, I have to show you my project," she said, cheeks flushed with excitement. "It's for school. We had to pick a family hero and write about them." She hoisted the poster up onto the dining table. My breath caught when I saw my own face drawn in marker. Round glasses, short hair, a little smile. Underneath, in neat, wobbly handwriting, it said, "My Grandma Evie." "Oh, baby," I breathed. "You picked me?" She nodded vigorously. "Of course," she said. "You're brave. Miss Ramirez said a hero is someone who tells the truth even when it makes people mad or when it's scary. You told the truth at Mommy's birthday. I heard Daddy tell Uncle Paul. He said you were, She squinted, trying to remember. "He said you were the only one with a backbone at that table." I blinked hard, my vision blurring. "Did he now?" I murmured. Lily pointed at one of the little paragraphs she'd written. "I wrote that you are nice and you make cookies and you don't let people be mean to you anymore because that's what my hero would do." I swallowed past the lump in my throat and pulled her into a hug, careful not to crush the poster. She smelled like crayons and apples and the strawberry shampoo her mother liked. "You have no idea how much that means to me," I whispered into her hair. That night, after she and Jason left and the house fell silent again, I sat at the kitchen table with the poster propped against a chair across from me. My late husband's glasses were on the table too, beside the envelope with Mr. Green's letter and a small plain card I hadn't opened yet. The card had arrived a few days before in the mail, no return address, but the handwriting on the front, my name in tight, neat letters, was familiar. I'd set it aside at first. I wanted to be in the right frame of mind before I opened anything for Maddie. Now, with the house wrapped in evening shadows and Lily's poster watching me with my own drawn-on eyes, I picked up the card and slid a finger under the flap. Inside, on a single piece of white cardstock, were just a few lines. "Evie, I'm writing this because Jason says I owe you more than silence. And because, if I'm honest, I know he's right. I took advantage of your kindness. I treated your money like it was mine, and your boundaries like they were a joke. I'm not going to pretend I didn't know better. I did. I just didn't care enough to stop. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me or trust me again. I just wanted you to know I'm not blaming you anymore. I did this to myself. M." I read it twice. The words were stiff in places, but there was something real underneath them, a little raw nerve of accountability. I didn't feel a big rush of forgiveness. I didn't suddenly want to invite her over for Sunday dinner. What I felt was a loosening, a tiny knot in my chest untying itself. "All right," I said into the quiet kitchen. "That's a start." I put the card back in its envelope and slid it into the drawer with the glasses and the lawyer's letter. Not forgotten, not erased, just acknowledged. Life didn't turn into a fairy tale after that. Bills still came. My knees still hurt when it rained. Some days I still felt the old ache of loneliness when the house got too quiet. But there was a new kind of peace, too. I no longer flinched when the phone rang, wondering what new crisis I'd be asked to fund. I could open my banking app without my stomach dropping. The numbers were where they should be, moving up and down in ways that made sense.
And there was something else. A little spark of pride when I thought about that night at the restaurant. Not because I'd embarrassed anyone, but because I'd stood up for myself in a world that likes to pretend older women are either invisible or endlessly available. One evening, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and carried it out to the back porch. The sun was sliding down behind the roofs of the neighboring houses, painting the sky in streaks of gold and pink. My herb garden rustled softly in the breeze, rosemary and mint brushing against each other like old friends. I sat in my usual chair, wrapped my hands around the warm mug, and just breathed. The sounds of the neighborhood washed over me. Distant laughter from kids on bikes, a car door slamming, a dog barking 2 houses down. Normal sounds, safe sounds. I thought about all the women I'd met over the years, at school, at church, in the bank line, who had told me little stories that sounded a lot like mine. My son took out a loan in my name. My niece keeps borrowing my card and never paying it back. If I say no, they make me feel like I don't love them. I wished I could gather them all on my porch, hand them each a mug of tea and look them in the eye. "You're allowed to protect what you built," I would tell them. "You're not selfish for wanting to keep a roof over your own head. You're not cruel for refusing to be used." I watched the sky darken,
the first stars winking into view. In the kitchen behind me, the clock chimed softly. Somewhere inside the house, my phone buzzed. Not because of a bank alert, just a photo from Jason of Lily holding her school project next to her teacher, both of them grinning. My eyes stung. I smiled. I took a slow sip of tea, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. In the glass of the back door, I could see my reflection faintly. An older woman with laugh lines and worry lines, a little gray in her hair, a softness around her middle. Not rich, not poor, not anyone's fool. I lifted my mug slightly like a silent toast to the woman in the glass and to all the others like her. Because here's what I learned, the hard way, but for good. When folks start treating you like a walking wallet, child, it's time to close the purse and open their eyes.